Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm recording this on February 21st, 2021. Looking out my window, we have a nice blue sky, sunny day. Hopefully it'll melt away some of the snow and ice that's laying about. We haven't had many sunny days in central Jersey this winter, especially recently. Today I want to talk about the Alfred Hitchcock Classics collection. This is the 4K UHD collection of Rear Window, Vertigo, Psycho, and the Birds. And my first stimulus check, I was a 2 to 3 time a week moviegoer before the virus, and I was getting so bored sitting home, being retired, that I used my first stimulus check to buy a 4K UHD 65-inch TV and a UHD Blu-ray player, a sound bar, and I just got my $600 stimulus check. So I'm going to be stimulating the electronic industry yet again with buying a few more Blu-rays and maybe even some more 4K UHDs. Now, I haven't bought very many. I got the Hitchcock, actually I've only bought 2 sets of the Hitchcock set, and I also got this Jason Bourne set. Most of the UHD movies are the big blockbuster movies, big budgets, and have more recent variety. I have nothing against them. I enjoy many of those films, but they're not really my main interest in movies. But I do like the Bourne movies, especially the first one. But I would hesitate to recommend this as the first 4K UHD box set to get, because the first one, the one I like best, is really didn't even seem like Blu-ray quality. And I was unaware that when I checked the reviews, and many reviewers said it was one of the most disappointing 4K UHDs ever. And the other 3, although they look much better, they really didn't look a whole lot different than Blu-rays look. And there's very few classic Hollywood movies, I think, besides the Hitchcock collection. I think there's a couple Jimmy Stewart movies, from the 30s, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life, are also out on Blu-ray, or on 4K. I'll get them eventually. But as much as disappointing as I was with the Bourne box set, this is spectacular. So if you're a Hitchcock fan, I mean, this is just amazing. I've seen all these films probably about 24 times throughout my life, and I saw them in movies, in the movie theaters, and TV. Hitchcock, when I was growing up, Hitchcock movies were constantly on TV. Then they were in some sort of legal limbo, and then for many years, and they weren't allowed to be shown on TV and movie theaters and film societies. They had disappeared, and then when they came back, when all that legal stuff was resolved, they were re-released. I think there was 5 or 6 of them. I know Rear Window and Vertigo were 2 of them, and they played in first-run movie theaters, and I took the opportunity, and I think most baby boomers my age who had only known some of these movies from television, because we were too young to go to see these movies, and their original releases, there were big crowds to see all these films, and but I hadn't seen any of these films probably for about at least 15 years, and because I wanted to move on, Hitchcock, I read so many books on Hitchcock, his biographies, his academic studies and whatever. But when I put in Rear Window, I was just totally stunned. All these times I've seen it, this was the best I ever saw it. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous. I love the movie. It's my favorite Hitchcock movie, always has been. It's not quite as painful as the other 3 films in this set, particularly. Jimmy Stewart is fantastic. He has great chemistry with Grace Kelly. She was, in my opinion, Grace Kelly was the most beautiful actress of her time, really of any era. And they had great chemistry together, and Stewart always had great chemistry with his stars. I love and with the co-stars too. I think that was part of the appeal of Jimmy Stewart. In the post-war era, he was very, he wanted to play more complex characters, darker characters, and he certainly gets to play, in these two Hitchcock films, he certainly gets to play that kind of role. And I love the one set. Hitchcock had experimented with Dial M for Murder and Rope with this, one set, and those were kind of experimental, not particularly, overpoweringly so as dramas, but this one is just magnificent. All those experiments all pay off in Rear Window. And talking about chemistry with Jimmy Stewart, the next one is Vertigo. Vertigo, of course, made it to #1 on the 2012 BFI consensus of worldwide film critics. It's a painful movie. It has a painful ending. The plot is bonkers, and although it had a deep effect on me when I was a young man, it's a very haunting movie. But I was sucked into it from the first minute. It's just an amazing film. It's dreamy. It's romantic. It's just it kind of takes all of Hitchcock, the expressionistic training that he had when he worked in UFA, the German Berlin film studio, the dreamy romanticism of 40s movies, and the post-war pessimism. It's all here in one movie. And again, Kim Novak and Jimmy Stewart are just fantastic chemistry. I mean, I think Vera Miles was meant to play that part, and then she got pregnant, and then Kim Novak. It's one of those parts of how could anybody else have played the Judy Madeline part in this film. And in fact, they had Stewart and Novak had such great chemistry. Universal brought them back immediately in a romantic comedy called Bell Book and Candle, in which Kim Novak bewitches Jimmy Stewart yet again. I read a recent interview with Kim Novak. She's 88 now, and she left Hollywood in 1966. She still made some movies, not that many, but she never liked Hollywood. She viewed it as a land of phonies. But Jimmy Stewart, she says in this interview, was the most real person she'd ever met in Hollywood, and he was such a pleasure to work with him, and you can really see this in Vertigo. And, the ending is just, it struck me, and of all these 4 movies, this is the one that really rocks in UHD. And there's the early scene where Jimmy Stewart goes to this bar called Ernie's, and he, in order his friend who wants Jimmy Stewart to tell his wife to see what she's up to, is going to be in the bar, or in the restaurant part of the bar, and so Jimmy Stewart would get an idea of what she looks like, who he has to tell, and the bar, the walls are blood red. The dress that Kim Novak is wearing, emerald green, and that green runs throughout the film. And when you see it in the kind of HDR kind of color enhancement, it's just incredible. As many times I've seen this film, it just, like I say, it absolutely devastates me in the ending. Now the next film in the set is Psycho, and Psycho is the black and white. This is the first and only UHD I've seen in black and white, and because I have a 65-inch screen, you do see some of the grain. I'm not an anti-grain person. I don't mind grain at all. But I don't think even if grain bothered, I don't think it's excessive in this. It's far more noticeable than it is in the color movies. There's a controversy with this that the mono track is missing. I listened to, I guess it's the DTS track, and audio-wise, because I live in a small apartment in a retirement community, I can't boom out the audio anyway, so my sound bar is basically for crisp and clear dialogue, which it does deliver. But I thought this movie looked absolutely great, and you know, everything that's been said about Psycho, it spawned, as has already been said, it spawned 100,000 slasher movies. There was no slasher. You gotta put in the context. There was no slasher movie anything like Psycho beforehand. But my favorite scene is probably the scene where Janet Leigh goes back into the parlor of the motel office where Anthony Perkins has prepared a snack, sandwiches for Janet Leigh, and they have a conversation. It's just, especially when you know the ending, it's just so poignant. And you know, you see the stuffed birds, and Hitchcock films Anthony Perkins as if he looks like a bird. And you know, the poignancy that what Hitchcock does is he gets you to identify with Anthony Perkins, and he's a monster for sure, but he's also a recognizable human being, and that a recognizable human being could perform those kind of horrible acts is probably more disturbing in some ways, and kind of we don't really want to confront it. So most slashers have masks, or they're just horrible looking, and they're just evil through and through. Whereas with Anthony Perkins, we kind of sympathize with him, even though he is, in fact, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. Hopefully I should have said spoilers. I would think Psycho, everybody's seen, knows about Psycho now. And then the next film, and those birds, you know, what's really humorous is all those stuffed birds in his back parlor, and the theme of birds in the film, of course, lends us to Hitchcock's next film, The Birds. And this was a film that I sort of put off seeing. I always loved the film, but when you learn about Tippi Hedren and her adventures, the way Hitchcock treated her, it can be kind of a difficult thing to want to watch, painful again. But gosh, I think more than any of these four films, I saw this film like differently for some reason this time. I thought the acting and the talking scenes, you know, let's get to the birds, but I thought the talking scenes were absolutely superb. The relationship of Rod Taylor and his mother's relationship with Tippi Hedren. And I was also struck by how, what a tragedy this was. And really these last three films, Psycho and Vertigo and this one, are really tragedies and so pessimistic. And you can't overestimate the impact of World War II and the Nazis, the Holocaust, the atomic bomb, what that had on filmmakers in that era who lived through that era. And Hitchcock was always an anti-fascist and snuck anti-fascist themes into his films before World War II, which wasn't that common. And the whole movie, it was a movie I loved so much. And one time when I was visiting California, I drove up the coast from San Francisco to Bodega Bay. Bodega Bay it's just as Suzanne Plesset describes, a bunch of shacks on a hillside. That's what it looks like today. It's a little bit different because the gas station that blows up is on the other side of the road, and there's a restaurant on the bay itself. If you ever go there, you got to take a meal at a very good seafood dinner there, and you can look across the bay at the spot where the house was built. They just built an exterior house, and the interiors were filmed in Hollywood. But you know, you can see Tippi Hedren if you are imaginative. You can see Tippi Hedren coming at you with in her outboard motorboat and getting attacked by gulls. And in fact, there were a bunch of gulls when I was there flying over the bay. So that's the Hitchcock Classic Collection. And again, I would, you know, if you get a UHD, if you have one, if you love Hitchcock, this is outstanding. Okay, that'll wrap it up for today, and I'll catch you guys next time.